Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining the Legal Mentor Network's webinar on how to get a job in 2026. My name is Crystal Morrow, and I'm the Executive Director of Legal Mentor Network, a nonprofit focused on providing free professional mentorship to law students and early career attorneys. You can learn more about Legal Mentor Network at legalmentornetwork.org. And today we're really excited about our panel and our discussion. One of the most common questions that we get from mentors and mentees are, how do I get a job? What's new in the search? What should I be doing if I'm looking for a new opportunity? So I am very thankful to have today on our panel Amy Goldstein, legal recruiter and career coach with Grayson Allen, Pete Patignano, VP and Senior Counsel, Global Security and Risk Management at American Express, and Laura Karmatz, Senior Director of the Global Attorney Experience at Reed Smith. So thank you guys for joining. Thank you everyone for listening. And I think we're gonna kick it off, Amy, just with some thoughts from you on getting the right mentality as being the first step for your job search.
Right. Thanks, Crystal. I'm so happy to be here talking about this. And there are a couple of points I want to focus on. One is what you should do, and one is what you shouldn't do. So, first, if you're looking for a job, the first thing to know is that you will land. You need to be dedicated and on a very regular basis, either daily or close to daily, doing something to move the ball forward. And you need to be open-minded and opportunistic. There are always jobs out there. Is it exactly what you envision? Maybe not. So you do have to stretch your thinking sometimes, but know that you will land. The what not to do is not to worry so much about what you hear are trends. I get that question all the time. How is the market? That is such a broad question.
Yeah.
And
I think that's why we're all here. We're like, what is the market? Where are the jobs?
right. And I've been paying attention leading into
Yeah.
this, especially over the past week. And of course, we're hearing about layoffs in some places and that the process is slow and tedious. And are there jobs out there? Is it real? And then I'm seeing people get counter offers, multiple offers, lots of placement going on. And so try and leave the noise aside and focus on your jobs. During COVID, when everything was shut down, there were things I was working on. Of course, it depends on your practice area, how robust the market is, but there are jobs out there. And then the last thing that I will just say is that you need to be thinking wisely about where things are trending, not the market, but AI is a great example. We hear about it all the time. Start educating yourself about how AI is impacting your area. Strategic advisors will always be needed. So you just need to learn, as an example, how to use AI as a tool to move yourself forward.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Maybe you're not interested in the law behind AI, but you should be learning how to use it in connection with your area of practice.
Exactly.
Great. And then just to keep us moving forward, Laura, where should we be looking for jobs? What are some good sites and places to look for jobs?
Yeah. At Reed Smith, I work with our lawyers, alums, and friends of the firm on their job searches. And the thing that we talk a lot about is kind of the two main areas to be looking. So obviously, there are the jobs that are posted online, and then there are the jobs that are not posted. And those are the jobs that you get through networking. So just focusing on first kind of where to be looking online. So there are things like the Association of Corporate Counsel. They have a really good website that has an excellent job board. There's also Go In House. That's an excellent site. It has a newsletter that comes out regularly. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn with a few caveats. I think that at this point, almost every organization is going to post a job on LinkedIn. And so in some ways it lets you see what's out there. It lets you see, I know you said not to really look at trends, but it gives you a sense of kind of what are the kinds of jobs that are out there. And it also is really helpful when you're trying to think about what do I actually want to do next? So taking a step back and thinking, what are my strengths? What are the jobs, the areas that are out there, and how can that be helpful? But the thing that I also tell everyone is that LinkedIn works when a company posts a job on LinkedIn, they can check off a box that says, please rerun this in 30 days. So on LinkedIn, you really get a lot of jobs that have been up there for a while. The other thing that happens is that we're starting to see that there are tons of applicants even within the first week. So one of the things to be aware of is to set your searches so that you're being alerted about jobs within the first 24 hours. And it's a good practice to try and apply right away because at some point they will kind of close the applicant pool. But anytime you're going to apply to something and you see it on LinkedIn, it really is best practice to go to the company's website and just to verify that that job is still open. And I recommend actually applying through the company website. I just think it's more direct and good practice. So there are a lot of different sites out there, but to me, the gold is to go to the company site because you're going to see that it's still there. They'll take it down as soon as they've made an offer. And then just keep in mind about timing. Networking, I'm a big believer that everybody has a network, whether it's your alumni network from law school, university, it's the parent down the street that your kid, the parent of a kid that you play soccer with. You just never know where an opportunity is going to come from. So it's getting your name out there, talking to lots of different people. Hopefully, you're top of mind, and when things come up, they let you know. And then also doing informational interviews where you are reaching out to people at organizations that you're interested in and just having informal discussions, learning about what the environment's like at the company or the organization, and just again being top of mind so that you're both actively searching on these sites and you're also more, I wouldn't call it passively, but you're talking to a lot of different people in your network just to be made aware of things that maybe aren't posted.
Yeah, and just a plug for Legal Mentor Network here as a great place to find individuals who are open to informational interviews. You can go to our website, sign up for the platform, and everyone who signed up as a mentor is already saying, like, I'm open, I'm open to questions, I'm open to talk. Like, let's grab a coffee or a Zoom. Happy to answer questions about what I do or what you might be looking for. But one of the reasons we invited Pete to do this panel is he is someone who I admire as someone who has a great network and knows how to build network. So Pete, I was hoping you could talk to the group a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me. Thoughts, jokes, bad comments are all my own, not American Expresses, just to lay that out for you all. Before I get into network, I did want to just pick up on some threads that Amy and Laura both
Yeah, of course.
mentioned. And one is about trends. And I truly do believe that you have to invest in being what I would call a next generation lawyer, somebody who is embracing the technology, learning how to use it, and is not afraid, I think, to grapple with a lot of the issues around that. Again, doesn't mean that you have to be an AI lawyer, somebody who's thinking about large language models and other sorts of things and how agents are going to be impacting supply chains or whatever else it might be. But you do have to be somebody who is really open to having an elastic mindset, a growth mindset around how are you going to be practicing and how this is all changing really quickly. In my day-to-day practice right now, I'm using our approved tools that have AI, like I wouldn't just say daily, almost for every task that I'm looking at. So I think that's really important. As far as working your network, I think when looking for a job, the first thing to keep in mind, and this is something I think Amy talks about too, is really your mindset. I do believe there's such a thing as toxic positivity, but I also think that it's overused. You have to be positive. You are going to find a job, and you have to take the opportunity you've been given in some ways to go out there and explore things as one of a great reframing where you get to fill in what's going to be inside that frame. Otherwise, you will people will pick up on the fact that you don't have that confidence and that positivity, and that's really important. And part of that, I think, is embracing for those of you who might be introverts or otherwise don't love networking. And I will tell you, even the people who tell me they like networking, or even the people that I consider to be great networkers and hubs, say they don't like networking. So you're not alone.
It's awkward, right?
It's awkward. It's painful. It's inconvenient a lot of times.
Yeah.
It's like kind of like a date of some sort. A lot of times a blind date, which is not easy for a bunch of different people, for a bunch of people. But I do think you've got to think about your network, and what I would call your team is the way I sort of think about it, as a long-term asset and not just a tool you're going to use when you're looking for a job. This is advice I haven't followed in my career. I've been practicing for about 20 years. I've let my network sort of dangle and lay out there, but I think that that you need to really explicitly think about those people that you work closely with, that you trust, and that you know trust you, and be willing to reach out to them, just say hello sometimes, and to check in with them. Also, picking up on something Laura said, I think you've got to think of your network as a really expansive group. That is anybody that's willing to talk to you, and I think you should take every opportunity to talk to somebody, regardless if it seems to be something that is that might be a little bit of a dead end. When you are looking for a new role, or your first role even, it's important to be explicit with your network, I think, in a lot of ways. Not just hey, let me know if you hear of anything, keep your ear to the ground. I do that sometimes with people if I'm looking for a role, but I think it's important to show that you're really prepared and serious about looking for a job, that you're really targeting something, that you're taking a close thought about thinking closely about types of industries that you'd like to support, or types of firms, or practice areas that you're interested in. It makes the helpers out there, and there are helpers everywhere, people who like to do this, who like to connect folks with other folks. But it makes their job easier, and it also fires certain neurons in their brains where they say, you're interested in third party risk. I know Pete at Amex who's doing that. He's like a super nice guy and will talk to anybody. Why don't you call Pete? And you never know what Pete's going to say, right? Pete might have 4 more people for you to talk to, or might even have a position that's open. As far as communicating with your network, respect, direct, and timely, I think, is the right way. I think that either Amy or Laura already mentioned in some ways, but and maybe that was about LinkedIn, but you got to move kind of quickly with things, and I don't think you should let anything languish. So I think that's generally the
main
tips. Yeah.
And just to piggyback just on something you said, I do think there's a difference between the informational interviews, like that Laura was talking about, and using your network for a specific job. I think it's very important to say, there's a job at your company, I'm interested in that job, not just like, let's grab a coffee and catch up. If there's a specific opportunity that you're interested in and you need to move on that opportunity, like, timely.
Yeah. And I will say that, I recently just came out of the job search. My early discussions with some of my network, and I would call them more mentors, maybe some more experienced or senior, both attorneys and folks who I'd supported as a lawyer, were helping me to figure out what I kind of wanted to do. So I think that you can sort of look at your network and put folks into different categories of how you'd like to use them. So it's not that you have to know exactly what you want, right? I don't think that should keep you from having a conversation, but you should just keep in mind that, especially when speaking with, or as you get clearer and you're speaking with maybe folks that are a little further away from your inside baseball talk, that you try to be kind of as clear as what you're looking for as you can.
Yeah, and it's always nice to have someone cheering you on, even if it's a mentor or a friend.
I wanted to also just to add on to what Pete and Crystal were saying, and that from the practical perspective of when you're actually applying for the job, not the informational interview piece, there are so many applicants now that it's almost critical that when you are interested in a job at a particular organization, that you find someone at that organization to pass along your resume, because just applying kind of into that online void doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be seen. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but I think that's to Pete's point about being really clear. When you see something you're interested in, let them know specifically. And some people get nervous about reaching out and thinking, well, is it a lot to ask? I will tell you that the majority of firms have referral programs. And so if you refer a candidate and you work there, you're often given some kind of financial incentive to do that. So they're being nice, absolutely. And there's a financial incentive. So don't ever feel like you're, putting somebody out.
That's the same for in-house positions too, just to
Yeah.
transparent.
Okay. Yeah.
I just also want to add to what everyone is saying that a mindset piece is, and yes, sometimes it is certainly a favor, but you should be looking at the value that you are going to add. And whether it is an informational interview or there is an actual job, when you are asking someone to submit your resume or just for information, you should also be framing it and seeing yourself as a value add. So certainly, as Pete was saying, make it easy for them and give them information, but it shouldn't just be, I'm interested in the job. It's, here's how I'm going to help the person who is hiring with my skills, with my soft skills, technical and soft skills, and really be thinking about it as it's not necessarily, it's a small favor, but also really that you're doing them a favor by being thrown in for the position. And also on the informational piece, it is, if networking is something that gives you the X, as everyone was talking about, you can try and think about it as just relationship building. Learn about what the other person is doing, where their interests are. If you organically build that over time, it is much easier to have the ask when you're ready than to just be asking when you actually need the favor.
I think that's great. I'm going to give my tip for networking events, which might surprise some of you that know me, is that I do find them awkward, and I like to be the first one in and the first one out. And I like to go there, meet 3 people, and then go home. And I usually find some other like-minded people who are there earlier. It's not crowded yet. It's easier to have a conversation. People will probably remember you. So that's my quick tip on the awkwardness of networking events.
That's super funny because I like to be late. So that
like to be the last man standing.
I can sort of roll into the middle of some discussions.
Yeah.
I also think it's helpful to have some questions lined up. And yes, it can also, of course, be work related, but it can be about a vacation. It can be about music. It can be just anything that is an icebreaker. Maybe it's not a vacation, just what do you like to do in your free time? Just things that can get people talking. Even if you're uncomfortable, they're uncomfortable. There's some basic things that you can do to warm things up.
And to know that everybody feels the way you do, that, you may feel uncomfortable and nervous and they feel the same way. So.
Yeah. And I think, my oldest sister used to tell me this. She hasn't recently. I don't know what that means, but you don't have to dance with everyone you meet, but it's nice to say hello and goodbye. So you're not gonna necessarily hit it off with everybody that you're networking with, or even on an informational interview. That's okay. For those of you with kids out there, as your kids start to make friends, you don't always fully gel with the kids' parents, right? I mean, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them or you. There's a lot of fish in the sea. And so it can't hurt to, again, retain, I think, a positive mindset and trying to embrace people with a level of kindness and respect, and what comes back. And if it's not the right thing, just move on.
And it's okay to just say nice to meet you and then look for another group. You don't have to stay in that conversation.
Yeah, good tips. I'm going to reshift us a little bit to the big name in the room, LinkedIn. I know we've all talked about it. It's probably how you heard about this webinar. We can doom scroll on LinkedIn, but Amy is here to tell some tips for LinkedIn, maybe updating for our profile, or should we be posting content? Just some common concerns and questions we get.
Sure. So, and if you are completely uncomfortable with LinkedIn, you still need to have a presence. Sorry. That is just
Same as
if you are submitting for a job, if you are looking for a job, people are looking after you submit at your profile. It doesn't have to be the same. It has to be aligned, and you want it to be engaging. So that means a nice professional photo, which doesn't mean you have to get a professional photo anymore. AI is actually doing a great job of creating headshots from basic pictures. And so there really is no barrier to entry anymore. Your headline, which is right under your name, a lot of times I see people that it just says counsel at whatever company. That doesn't help recruiters who do use LinkedIn as a search tool. Internal at companies and firms and also external recruiters are looking for, well, who is doing what I need? So if you are an M&A attorney, you want to say that. If you are a litigator, if you do commercial litigation, if you do employment law, you want something there that you want people to notice, so that they know what to be reaching out to you for, or again, to be aligned if you are submitting your resume and then they're going to it. I am a big fan of the about section being your pitch. I know some people put
that
it
like the summary section.
The summary section.
Okay.
It's a little bit underneath where your headline is, but I'm not sure. And people might have different suggestions for this. Some people use the experience and plug it in like a resume. I don't know. I don't always scroll down that far, or I might scroll down just to see where people work. So ideally, your about section is what you want people to see beyond that headline about your experience. Have you managed people? If you're a litigator and you go to trial and you've had, a first chair experience, those kinds of things you want in the about section. So those are the very basic things that you should have in your profile. If you are not comfortable posting content, that is okay. A way to get started with engaging on LinkedIn is to like posts. If someone changes jobs or has an anniversary, a promotion, whatever it is, you can write congratulations. That is easy to do. Maybe make a comment if you have something to add. When you're actually posting, you should be adding value. So again, thinking about your audience the same way I was talking before about what is your value add when you're asking people to keep an eye out for you or what have you. It is a similar thing on LinkedIn. If you post things that are contributing to the marketplace of ideas, people will react to it and LinkedIn will boost it. That is what they are looking for.
And do you think, I see two types of content on LinkedIn, like some of it, very little of it is actually really substantive, like about the law. I think a lot of it's about networking or like how to be a good lawyer, but not necessarily to a specific subject matter. Maybe that's just what LinkedIn is feeding me, but yeah, I mean, is there any science behind that? Or
it's a good question. Now that you're saying it, Crystal, I think you're right. I think to the extent I see things in practice areas, like maybe if there's a big Supreme Court decision or even within a state where it's an important decision, or there's a trend in, I don't know, private finance or things, I think it's more like trends and things that are impactful on the market as opposed to technical legal stuff. But once in a while, there is something there that's relevant. People certainly post when there is a big decision or
Yeah.
a big deal and kind of have commentary on that. So you can show that you're a subject matter expert in things if you want to. And there is a world of people who are interested in that. And that's a way to also boost your network and build
Yeah.
relationships by
If
having
you
people
have an interest
engage.
in an area of law maybe that you're not practicing enough of or want to explore more, maybe you can post on LinkedIn about it to to
And
show
then
that
another thing with
and
commenting
attract
and
others that
liking,
are interested in that area, right?
right. The one other thing I want to say about commenting and liking posts is you're now exposing yourself to all of the people. Not only are you helping the person who wrote the post get a boost, but you are exposing your name and your background to all of the people who are commenting and liking that person's post. So there's a whole new world, arguably, of people to connect with and engage with once you're putting yourself out there.
Yeah, I think those are really great tips and good information about LinkedIn. You talked about using AI for headshots. Would you have AI write your LinkedIn page or
So you have to be careful. I would say you can people are absolutely using AI. You can use
generate
it
content, right?
for the
I,
content,
yeah, I can
but you
tell.
have to be smart because if you just use I feel like you can tell, and other people are telling me you can tell. So you can use it as the idea and then make it your own, or you can write something. And if you feel like, I certainly, there are times I have a sentence where I'm like, I feel like there's a better way to say this, but I'm not sure what it is. I'll plug it in and see if something better comes back. Sometimes it doesn't. So you do still have to be thoughtful about it. Again, the whole idea is for it to be a tool that can help you improve, maybe organizationally or just to flesh something out. But you still need to be the one doing the thinking.
Great.
Can I offer like
Yeah.
maybe three thoughts on LinkedIn? Two bewares. One is to me, this is all personal, right?
Yeah.
Beware the overposter, and um, I don't know how effective it is, and I could see it being detrimental where you're just constantly posting about everything or generating content that is maybe not as insightful as it should be. The second beware just limiting your job search to LinkedIn job openings. When I was looking for a new position, applied to dozens of jobs on LinkedIn and never heard back from a lot of them. Doesn't mean they're not real. And I think, as Laura sort of said, a lot of them are absolutely real, but it can't just stop at LinkedIn, is sort of my personal view. And then the third one is a positive thing about LinkedIn. I agree with you, Amy. Like, I think everybody's looking at it. Consider consider how you're using your resume in comparison to your LinkedIn profile. Whether or not you want to have a short, punchy resume and then fill in more on LinkedIn, so that it can be used as sort of a more expansive way for you to explain what you've been up to and how you're doing. Um, I don't know what the right answer is. Actually, I'd love to hear from Laura and Amy about what they think about that idea.
Yeah, I just want to chime in with a word from our sponsor, Job Lasso, and say that is a job board that is a great resource for, especially Laura talked about a lot of in-house resources, but this Job Lasso is for lateral moves at firms. So I would check them out as an additional resource to LinkedIn, but I don't want to cut anyone off. So I don't know if Laura, you had more to add on that, and we also wanted you to talk a little about not just using AI for your LinkedIn, but using AI maybe for your
Yeah.
resume or job prep.
Yeah. So Pete, to kind of jump on what you said, the biggest thing for me with LinkedIn is that it matches your resume, that there's nothing kind of surprising or totally different. Because I do think, and like Amy was saying, like recruiters are going to LinkedIn, so they want to see kind of your snapshot. and making sure that it is reflective of then what you're going to show in your resume and what you're going to talk about in your interview. So that's just something I recommend, that the wording is similar. And then in terms of AI, it's kind of staggering to me. I mean, it is a whole new world, even in the last year, where one of the things that I tell people is that when you are applying for a job, you really ought to take that job description, your resume, you put it into AI, and the prompt is really, what keywords do I need to add to be able to get through the applicant tracking systems? Because at these big organizations, these big law firms, they are limited and limiting the number of people that are reviewing resumes. They are really relying now on, they're putting in criteria and they want to see those words match. And it is, like Amy said, it's this balance of like, you want to use AI, but you also want to represent who you are. At the end of the day, I'm convinced that if you don't have certain keywords, you're just not going to get through. And that may be part of the problem too, that, Pete, on LinkedIn, that like I was talking to someone who applied for a role and it was a corporate counsel role. And she said, oh, well, it wasn't really the equivalent title that I have at my organization, so I didn't really put it in. And I said, you need to find a way to somehow work in corporate counsel into your resume, because otherwise it's gonna knock you out. There's also a really good resource that I like called teal.com, like the color, TEAL.com. And it does a similar thing where you can put in your resume, put in the job, and it helps you kind of tailor your resume. So it's striking this balance where you have the appropriate words, but you don't sound so robotic that it still sounds like you. It's a fine line. And then I think, it's really valuable, right? Like you can learn a lot from AI and the tips, and just being aware that some of it's still phantom answers that are not accurate. So using it to your advantage, but also just being conscious that you really need to be conscious on it. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, I'm just going to add to that. I recently revamped my resume, and a tip that I received that I never really thought of, but I like a lot, is to take, depending on the job, the key parts, the key words or sentences maybe that are on your resume that apply to that job, and to put them in bold, because it might have been you, Laura, who said people take about 5 to 10 seconds to look at your resume before they're interviewing you. So just having it, they've printed it or gotten an email to them, and they have 10 seconds and they see the things in bold that match up with the job description.
Absolutely. It's people literally are scanning your resume in under 10 seconds. And so, what is the story that you want to tell with these bolded words that as they're scanning through, they come away with, yep, that's a match to this job, or, oh, I don't see that. No. So, yeah, absolutely.
Great. And just gonna bring it back. Amy, did you have something you wanted to add?
I just wanted to add very quickly while we're talking about these keywords, Laura is absolutely right that you should be looking at the job description and making sure that the most important things are there, but you only need it to be there once. I see resumes all the time where like it's a corporate counsel job and corporate counsel is like worked in, 50 times before you get through the first job description. Like you just need the words on there. You don't need to be repetitive, because personally, I feel like the repetition ends up being distracting, because then your eye just goes to seeing that the same thing is said a bunch of times, and attention spans, as we were just talking about, are so short. You want it to be impactful, and you want all of the most important words to be caught.
And I think also where you put, so, you often get where you'll have a couple of roles where you've done similar things. And so I was always told that when you add a bullet or you add information, it should be different enough that you're not repeating the thing above. And then depending on the job that you're applying for, those are the things that you highlight right in your most recent job if you have them. Kind of to Amy's point, you don't want to keep repeating lots of things. You want new information with each of the bullets.
Can I ask you both? I received advice that, and I've been a lawyer for 20 years, that that my resume should be one page and should include colors. What do you guys think about that, Amy and Laura, from sort of your perspective? Because of the idea that somebody's going to look at it for literally 15 seconds potentially.
So
Oh, go ahead, Amy.
the one page, I really think depends. At 20 years, if you've had one job for the 20 years, yes, you can probably get it on one page. If you've made moves and you do different things, you're probably on 2 pages, and that's okay. You should be able to get 90% of the people out there, even at the senior level, should be able to explain what they're doing what they've done within 2 pages. Do people get to the second page? Maybe, if you've really captured their attention. Do they get to the third? No. So you need to be really strategic and thoughtful, but there are absolutely people who have made important transitions, but their overall experience is important. And yes, then you're going on to 2 pages. You just need to be thoughtful about it. I am on the fence, honestly, Pete, about color. Sometimes I like it, and
Yeah,
sometimes Crystal's laughing because we've talked about this. Sometimes I think it's a distraction. And so I still feel like we're a traditional industry, and I don't think it hurts if you are bolding things and highlighting, as we've talked about. I don't think color is imperative. I think it is a fine line, and if you are going to use it, you don't want it to be a distraction.
Yeah, I would agree. I think personally, I think the bolding is enough. I don't think you need a lot of different colors, but you do need some distinction of the message that you're trying to impart. Um, and I'm blanking now on the other piece. What? Yes, I agree. 2 pages to me is okay. At 3, no. But I think you're right, Amy, that it really depends. You're trying to show a variety of experience with the most representative and the most matching of the job you're applying to at the top. But people have done a lot of different things. I think also, there's the question too around how far back do you show your experience? And I think rule of thumb to me is that you don't necessarily want to go past 15 years. Like beyond that, it's
Disagree.
getting pretty. Oh, you disagree? Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, oh, go ahead.
Everything is discoverable now. So I understand what you're saying, Laura, but I feel like it's a little bit of a rabbit hole. If I see someone, let's say they start with their in-house experience and it's already a mid or senior level job, I am digging to figure out what they did before. And so I feel like you run the risk a little bit of making yourself even more senior than you actually are. I've seen people do that where they're 20 years out and they're presenting like they're 40 years out. I'm like, you're not about to retire. You don't need to hide some of that experience. I think it depends on what type of job you're going for, but I do think you have to be careful. And I know, Laura, this is something that people definitely give very different advice on. Personally, I feel like your experience is your experience and you wear it proudly, and it's your overall that's going to get you to the job that's actually a fit for you.
And to be fair, you probably want to work for an organization that aligns with your values. And so if you are, proud of what you've done, you have a lot of experience, you want an organization that's going to recognize that and value that. So
100%.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I know we're doing okay on time, but I just want we found a job. We submitted our awesome revamped resume. We have an interview. Does anyone quickly have like any interview tips they wanted to throw into the conversation?
Go
No,
go ahead.
you can start.
I was just going to say that I really subscribe to the STAR method. If you're not familiar with it, it's very easy to look up. It's a great way to keep your answers concise, on point. You're literally talking about a situation, the task at hand, the action, and the result. So when I tell people to prep for interviews, to think about your answers in that format. You don't want to talk too long, but you want to make your point and what the impact is.
Yeah, I agree on being concise, and it really is a showcase for your ability to give an executive briefing or something like that. A couple of quick thoughts is back to the sort of part of the AI conversation. Using using the audio modes or the verbal modes of AI can be really helpful in prepping for an interview. You can ask AI to take a look at a company, or firms might be a little bit different, but a company's if they're public or even if they're not public, it can scour the web for 10Ks and annual reports, proxy reports, whatever else it might be. And depending on your role, you can even ask it to hone in on certain portions of that and then give you a briefing, and you can have a full conversation with an AI bot. It's not always right, so you've got to question it at times and say, "Are you sure about that?" And they're getting pretty good at telling you, "I'm 100% sure about the following. The other stuff I kind of inferred from this or that." But I found it super helpful in my recent search to, I literally had a 2 hour conversation with an AI bot, or not even a bot, with an AI app about one of the companies that I was interviewing with. It can generate good questions for you as well. I tend not to be super big on like rehearsing questions and answers, but it can take you there if you'd like to do that as well. I think it's important. I'm a culture first person in how I hire and then in how I was interviewing too. So what Laura just said about the right fit is super important for me. I think that at least for me, I give my all at work and I sort of integrate my life. So it's got to be matching to the way that I sort of operate in my own life, with people who are relatively pleasant to work for, have the right goals and I think values. But to keep in mind beyond the culture fit is really that you need to be thinking about how you're going to show your judgment, and depending on the level of what you're doing, your gravitas, your presence. Um, so I think that, like Laura was just saying, with the STAR method, to be able to show stories that indicate how you've handled yourself, is super important. And it's also important for me, or that maybe not for everybody, that it's actually a conversation. It doesn't mean like, oh, I'm interrogating my potential future employer to find out if it's the right fit. There's no arrogance to it. It's more of like, am I going to be able to have a conversation with these people about important things that they're facing and related experiences that I have. So it's having, a level of confidence and preparedness and then calmness, I think, to be able to do that, where you're not tight, you're loose enough that you can actually engage and be able to give a real indication of what you're going to be like if you decide to, if the two parties decide to move forward together. Yeah, so a couple thoughts on interviews.
Great, thank you.
Well, just add a couple quick things. Just piggybacking on what Pete just said, its standpoint, candidates forget all the time. It is a two-way street. I know you want a job, but you want the right job. And so you should be, of course, respectful and showing the employer, the potential employer, that you check all the boxes that they need. It is how you ask, but you are absolutely allowed to ask questions to make sure it is a right fit for you. So don't forget that. And then the other thing, which is so basic, but people forget all the time, don't forget to review the resume you submitted and what is on LinkedIn. Because anything that you sent or have posted is fair game. And you would be amazed at how many times people forget what resume they send for something, and then they get a question about it. And if there is something on your resume from earlier in your career that you are not as familiar with anymore, or you didn't have a big role, it was a filler back when, get it off your resume. If you can't talk intelligently about it, don't have it there.
Advice. So we just have a little bit of time left. I wanted to open the floor for Q&A. If anyone had any questions, please them in the chat. I will also take this moment to do another plug for the Legal Mentor Network as a network. Myself, I find myself that, maybe the original network you think of as the people from law school. And as time passes, maybe like that's really not the network that you have kept in touch with. So then there's your first job, but then you're on your second job and those people aren't together anymore. Going out and finding an intentional network, something like the Legal Mentor Network, something like the New York Bar Association has more specialized groups by subject area, or I know there are affinity group networking groups. I just learned yesterday there's something called it's called Lawyer Athlete Networking Group for lawyers that were athletes in college. So I think there's actually a professional networking group for any interest you may have. And that's a great way to get back into networking. Of course, I support Legal Mentor Network as a way to give back. A strong believer in reaping what you sow. So I am thankful for my mentors and thankful to have mentees who teach me as well. So I encourage you to check us out and sign up. And also here's some questions from the group. Any tips or advice for boutique or small law firm associates seeking lateral opportunities? Also, during interviews, what should these associates focus on? Anyone want to take that? I would focus on the area of law that you're interested in. I think that is going to get you from a small law firm to a bigger law firm.
If that's what they're looking for,
that's kind of my understanding of the
that's what you think. Okay.
And I during my interviews, I would focus on that as well. What are the opportunities in this area of law? You're probably interested in a bigger law firm, a bigger name, a bigger salary, but you want to be able to bring your passion and experience for that area of law.
And I think that's also where networking really comes in. It's finding people that are doing what you want to do and really just having conversations about them. So you're learning the language and how to talk about things. And to me, that's a lot about your network.
I don't have big law experience, so maybe I'm not the best to answer this, but I do find it important to highlight portable skills. And I love working at places that value portable skills. And in fact, I like hiring people with portable skills, because most areas of law are, maybe not some patent stuff, but are very much teachable for somebody who is really smart, really eager, really dedicated. So a little bit of a different take, Crystal, than what you were saying. I would focus on some of those portable skills that you've developed in your first year.
Yeah, I think there's a big market for lateral attorneys. I don't think you have to get that big law job straight out of law school anymore. Job Lasso, our sponsor, is one of those many platforms that focuses on lateral opportunities. And another question for the group: what are your recommendations for trying to make connections in a company to see if they'll put your resume on the top of the pile? I think this is piggybacking off of what Laura mentioned about how you really want to have an inside person asking for HR to pull your resume to even look at.
Yeah, I think it's really important. It's a limited amount of time and energy. That is, to me, the number one thing that you want to focus on, is that connection to somebody inside if you can, or somebody who knows somebody inside. It's okay if it's 1 degree removed.
And then if you don't have someone, even as Laura said, who's a degree removed, you still try. You can reach out to the recruiting contact. You can try and find someone who went to your alma mater, or just who does similar work to you. Whatever it is, to try and get someone to say, you know what, I'm happy to make sure that your resume is seen. And that's what I try and advise people to do when somebody doesn't know you at all and you're reaching out cold. You just want to say, hey, I know this is going to get a great response. Just want to make sure that my resume is part of the conversation.
And it hits sometimes and it doesn't. I mean, I think I did that multiple times where I wouldn't hear back, but nothing bad happened. Like the lights stayed on and nobody yelled at me. So, uh, then there are other times where I was able to find somebody who just had the same went to the same law school that I did and was willing to talk to me, right? Who I didn't know, who was like years apart from me, and we had no common friends. So I know as somebody who's been reached out to as well, I do my best to try to pay it forward or be as open as I can, depending on my schedule. I've very often talked to people who just cold called me. Maybe I'll say it's have 15 minutes to get a sense. And if it's a right fit though, and I'm like, I didn't really like this person, I'll talk to them, another time or whatever else it might be. So I don't think it can hurt to get out there.
Okay, we're going to jump to our next question. What advice do you all have for someone with a gap on their resume due to taking time to prepare to retake the bar exam? Is that something we should just address flat out in our resume?
Well, I think you're going to have the gap is there. I think you address in your cover letter the break if it is substantial. I think it depends on how long the break is. If it's a month and you're back at it, you can have, something about that you sat for the bar on your resume, and that is a little bit self-explanatory.
I did get a piece of advice from someone once, and I don't know exactly how you would phrase it here, but it's like if you can address it in your resume without having to have an awkward conversation about it, maybe there's a way to just do that. If it's a line or something that just so people don't have to continuously ask you about the gap. If it's a large gap, it might be better to address on your resume.
And then again, we keep talking about networking. This is a great example of where there is more forgiveness when there is someone advocating for you than just looking at the piece of paper. So you do the best you can with what you have, but if there is any way to get someone to warm things up for your submission, it just makes things like a gap a little bit easier to get over.
This one probably for Pete. What kinds of skills do in-house companies look for coming from a law firm doing litigation and white collar defense?
I think that in-house folks love litigators without a doubt. Because of the risk scanning that litigators are really well trained in, but also because litigators oftentimes have the ability to be pretty succinct about where facts and law are going to intersect. I think the number one issue that I've seen with especially more junior associates coming in-house is moving from, and this is not all firms, but from a show what you know into a just answer the question. Our in-house clients like really largely, and this is not an American Express or an IBM statement, they largely really want to get to the end of like, how do I solve this problem as quickly as possible and care less about what the legal arguments are around X, Y, or Z. They want to know the risk. They want to see all those things. But I think being succinct and really business oriented and business minded is the most important thing. So I like to tell folks, like, you got to start to think in bullets, and having, no more than 3 of them would be great if we can do it. so that's kind of the road.
I think you also want to think about how to get to yes, right? Like, I think that is one of the biggest things. In-house, they want to know, okay, how can I do this? Not, I shouldn't do this because of this. Yeah,
removing roadblocks, Laura, is like, totally.
And also, if you can show that you are the client contact, that you act in that advisory role along the way, as opposed to being removed and just handling the motion, the brief, the court appearances, but that you are also already starting to be that advisor, and the direct contact is very helpful as well, if that can be part of the pitch.
Any tips seeking lateral opportunities in a different practice area than the one you started from as a first year associate?
Anything you can do to show foundational skills. I once worked with someone who started out in family law and wanted to do anti-money laundering compliance. And so she got a certification and she started engaging with people on LinkedIn who were in the AML space. I mean, she basically started over, but you can make those jumps. You have to put in that much more effort to show that you are really committed and have the foundation to make the move.
I just realized there's a bunch of questions in the chat as well, so we'll try to get to some of those. What are good questions to ask during an interview to learn more about the firm's culture?
I think one of the best questions to ask is, this sounds cliche, but what does success look like after, 6 months? Because I think you really can learn a lot from that answer, right? If somebody's focused on, well, I want to see that, you're here a ton and you're always on and you're available and you're this, that, and this, you get a sense of the kind of culture. If you get somebody who says, well, I think it's, we have a nice pace, but there's work-life balance, like the way people answer that is going to be a big insight into what the environment and the culture is like. So I'm a big fan of the tell me what success looks like.
Yeah, and I don't know if I have any many formulated questions that I walk into an interview with. I mean, I do. It's about the business, but I really do believe that it's got to be, and I think Amy was talking about this a little bit. It's got to be a conversation that from that there's going to be sort of an organic creation of a lot of questions that you might have, and you're going to get a sense. And that's why just being stiff in an interview and not really engaging as like a professional and a human being is A, you're probably not going to get the job, and B, you really don't have the full vision of all of what is, what could be coming in this job. So you really need to, I think, practice, or to me, just be prepared about your own resume, your own background, how to talk about it, about what the firm is doing, with respect of not knowing the ins and outs of all those different things, and then be able to really just connect and flow in a lot of ways, so that you can really get an understanding of what it's like to work with the folks you're talking to.
And I also think there's a difference between the screener interview and the actual interview with the hiring manager. To me, the screening interviews are about how do I get to the next round, right? How can I say things that make them where I come off as really competent, together, interested, but I don't think you have to spend as much time on the details of everything that you've done. It's more of a, does this person seem like a good fit overall?
And then our last question, if you don't have a connection to someone internally, is it an acceptable alternative to work with a recruiter on a role, or should you still try to connect with someone internally before going for an interview?
So even if you're working with a recruiter, ideally if there is an opportunity to work with a recruiter, if you don't have a close contact, they can add a lot of value, because vet the recruiter certainly, but the recruiter should know people inside and be able to help push you. But contacting somebody internally can give you insights that the recruiter won't necessarily have. And so once the recruiter submits you, by all means, be using both resources. The more information you have, the better.
I think that's great. And then I saw a question and disappear, but someone just said, do I have to be a big law firm to go in-house? My answer would be no. I think that in-house roles are often, there's a lot of, small companies, startups, and that are not looking for people who are coming from big law, are people looking for people with more of like an entrepreneurship attitude, um, willing to roll up their sleeves, willing to work hard, with expertise in a certain area. So I think definitely no, you don't need big law to go in house. And I do see some questions about how to get jobs for international students. We have a whole webinar on that I would point you to and suggest you check that out because we're out of time. But I want to say thank you again to our hosts. I'm the host. Thank you to me. Thank you to our guests and panelists. Thank you to Legal Mentor Network and Job Lasso for sponsoring this event. And speak to everyone soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
This was great.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.